Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Garbage Time Takes. I am Derek here today with only one of my two normal co hosts, Dennis. Dennis, unfortunately, Bob cannot be with us. He's in the med school grind, so um, he's gotta hit the books, hit the notes, make sure he has enough quality sleep for his big exam tomorrow. So unfortunately, um, he will not be joining us today.
Indeed, he has definitely hitting the books hard, and all the love and support out to Bobby as he tackles this exam. It is tomorrow, correct? Tomorrow is the big exam. Okay, yeah. So
Correct.
got to get that sleep in, got to get that rest. We're gonna miss you tonight, Bobby, but can't wait to hear about how great the exam goes. And in the meantime, we'll be holding down the fort.
Correct. Yeah. I guess by the time this video goes up, it'll be his exam is today. Uh, but
True. Yeah.
but tomato tomato. Either way, Bob Bob could not afford to chill with the boys for 2.5, 3 hours into the wee hours of the night, 1, 2 in the
I
morning.
was gonna say, well, the thing is, he could probably make it work for a hour and a half pod if I had to guess, but he knew it would be a 4 hour
Time commitment.
escapade that
Correct.
went to 3 in the morning. If you could throw in the pre and post pod revelry, as he would probably call it. So yeah,
Absolutely.
understood, understood.
Absolutely. And with that, Dennis, I think we can just get right into the very first thing that sort of happened this week. And unfortunately, we won't get Bob's input on it. But the Masters, Dennis, the Masters, John Rahm, the big Spaniard, comes through in the end. Brooks Koepka, for those of you who are a fan of content and chaos and entertainment, unfortunately, you would use the word unfortunately choked down the stretch.
I'll say,
Uh, my
I can be Bobby here for a second. Folded like a steel chair.
Correct,
How was that?
correct. Like I
Folded
mean,
like a
like
steel chair.
like a steel chair, like a wet paper towel. You name anything that folds, he did it. Um, my, I mean, I thought it would have been cool if Brooks would have won because I am a Brooks fan. He's about the only live golfer I'm a fan of. Um, but I would have liked it to have been more competitive down the stretch. And I think you could even agree with that, even though you don't really care for Brooks, don't care for Liv. Seeing, those two go a little more head to head down the stretch than Rom just sort of run away with it after, I don't know, the 12th, 13th hole. Brooks was pretty much out of it by then, even though he was only maybe 2 or 3 strokes down. You could just feel that John wasn't giving it up, and Brooks never really looked. He just didn't have it going down those last 6 or 7 holes. So, Dennis, take your victory lap. You can parade for the PGA, and we saw you sent that graphic on what Friday, I think. There's only been what two other
Yes.
times where a golfer started out as hot as Brooks did, only to lose it. I'll pull up the graphic while you're talking.
I'll say
But
pull it up. I think it was like a 36 hole lead of four or more or something like that. Um, and both of those other times, you can pull up the exact
Yep, I
statistic.
got
Both
it.
of those other times were Greg Norman.
Correct.
And the irony behind that is just absolutely magnificent, to be honest with you.
Correct.
What is it?
So at Saturday at 11:45 Eastern, 8:45 Pacific time, Dennis sends this graphic from Golf Digest that says Brooks Koepka's opening 36-hole score of minus 12 or 12 under for us dimple heads out there marks the 12th time in men's major history a player is 12 under or better through 2 rounds of a major. 9 of the previous 11 went on to win. The two that didn't, Greg Norman in the 1990 Open and Greg Norman in the 1996 Masters. And Dennis's accompanying caption was, quote, and Greg won't even be there in person to witness history repeat itself. Darn. And Dennis, Nostra Dennis, I get to use that phrase again. Nostra Dennis is back. Dennis, I mean, give yourself a pat on the back. That
I,
was that was a call. That was a big
I,
call, and you nailed it.
It was. I mean, there was definitely some confidence that went into that call, and if you listened to us last week, as I hope you were, um, you listened to me go on the whole escapade about how Greg Norman was intentionally not invited to the Masters. So that's where that comes in into play in order to reduce drama and focus on the event and the players there, which all, in my mind at least makes sense. But yeah, at that time, it looked like Brooks was, the far and away front runner. And I'll give him a little bit of credit before I get on my soapbox. He played really well early in the week, and he looked impressive. He looked like the Brooks Koepka we've seen before. He couldn't miss, and just all aspects of his game were in form. Um, and to this point, it's not necessarily just Brooks. It's really hard to hold the lead of a golf tournament. I think people think about even going into the final round, oh, they're up by 3 shots, they're up by 4 shots. How could you blow that? Everyone else is chasing you. And what that means in golf is they can take the risky shots, they have less to lose. You have to play defensively and try not to make mistakes. And usually when you're trying not to make mistakes is when you make mistakes rather than hitting really good shots that put you in spots for birdies, like everyone who's chasing you is doing, including John Rahm. And that's what happened. A combination of that with Brooks just collapsing down the stretch. He's not used to playing the 72 hole gauntlets anymore,
I was
so I
just
can
about to say,
understand.
Dennis. I was just about to say, I'm sure you took this one as put one on the board for the PGA 72 is superior to
Yep.
54, and Brooks wasn't ready to handle the grind of 72 holes. But I mean,
Yeah.
it's tough. I mean, how many holes did they play on Sunday?
This is the thing is that final grouping. I think they played 6 holes from the Saturday's rained out round, so
Yeah, I
they
was gonna say I
played
thought they
24
played
holes,
24. Yeah.
25 holes. Um, because I think they were on 12 when it got called on Saturday. So yeah, it was a long day. Certainly for these guys, and there wasn't a ton of uh, time in between those rounds. And Brooks's scores, I'm just looking at it here: 65 on Thursday, was 7 under, and then went 67 on Friday to get to that 12 under that we mentioned before, and then 73, 75 on the weekend. And so just progressively worse. And on the one side, it's hard to hold a lead. On the other side, when you're used to playing 54 holes on weak golf courses, this is not unexpected.
I mean, it's hard to argue with the results, Dennis. It's hard to argue with the results. Yeah, he just couldn't find a fairway. Could not find a fairway. Could not find a green. Could not sink a putt. I mean, I'm sure you took a little bit of sadistic pleasure in his putt on 18, lipping out that would have given him solo second place.
I did.
If
I did.
if
That
he
was
would
a
have
joyous
sunk it.
occasion.
But yeah, I mean
Now,
that
I mean,
was
the other thing though is, at least, and I did want to bring this up is Phil Mickelson, Derek. Um, that would have put him in solo second, just above Phil Mickelson instead of tying him for second.
the
And
geriatric Phil
a live
Mickelson,
golfer.
Dennis.
Uh, the heart, outside of Greg Norman, perhaps what many would call the heart and soul of live golf, Phil Mickelson, made a charge,
Cer-
made an
cer-
absolute charge, 7 under on
certainly
Sunday.
certainly a grandstander of live golf. That's for sure.
You could definitely say that. Some comments were made. I'm not going to get into that right now, but you know, Phil played well, and I'm sure if Bobby were on here right now, he would be pointing out all the names at the top of this leaderboard, even though the one that truly matters isn't associated with the series. He'd be pointing out Mickelson, Koepka, Patrick Reed made a run and got himself into
You know what,
fourth.
Dennis? You know what, Dennis? I'm gonna do it for Bob because my winner of the week is live golf. I think live
Oh
golf
no.
are winners this week, and for those exact reason, three live golfers took top five in the Masters. Brooks Koepka, Phil Mickelson, Patrick Reed. I mean, there's a chance. I mean, going into it, there's a chance that the PGA could have really just slapped the live golf players around and said, "Screw you guys, y'all are bums." And all of a sudden, Phil Mickelson comes out of nowhere on Sunday and tears up the golf course. And then Patrick Reed just slowly but surely kept climbing his way, sinking putts, hitting shots. And Brooks was obviously up there all week. I mean, Dennis, you have to admit, it was a strong showing for Live Golf. They certainly did not come out as losers of the week. That is for sure.
No, definitely. And despite my bias, despite my PGA Tour colored glasses, uh, it was a successful weekend for Live Golf. It was, plain and simple. To have those guys, I mean, to have the publicity of Brooks at top the whole week, Thursday, Friday, and even I think when they started play back up on Sunday, even with those 6 holes left to play, he was up like 4 shots at that point.
Mm-hmm.
It was quite literally from the beginning to end of Sunday, like a 7 or 8 shot swing between
Correct.
him and John Rahm. And so, he was in the headlines all week, being atop the leaderboard, playing really well. And then when he folded down the stretch, which of course was a storyline, you had the other storylines, Phil Mickelson and Patrick Reed making a charge up the board. And so, they, whether it was explicitly mentioned as Live Golf, which it was not in the broadcasts or not, um, they had a successful weekend because everybody knows who they are. It's no secret. And
They still
hats off
got
to
it.
them in that regard.
They still got it. The other thing I wanted to talk about with the Masters, Dennis, Tiger, unfortunately having to pull out. Was I saw this floating around on Twitter, and Twitter, very rarely are things ever accurate on there. Is it true that the screw that's in his foot was sticking out of his skin? Was that true, or was that just a rumor I
I
saw? Did you see that
I
rumor
don't
as
know about
well?
that. I did not see the rumor, and I definitely didn't see any visual evidence that the
Yeah.
screw was sticking out of his foot.
Yeah.
I did see him very, very gingerly walking through the rain on Saturday before withdrawing. Um, did not look good at
No.
all, and I think the weather played a role in that. But ultimately, and unfortunately, he just wasn't up for 72 holes himself.
Yeah.
And hats off to him for making the cut. But I also think that he realized during that round on Saturday before it got eventually rained out, which is when he withdrew. I believe he withdrew technically in between,
Yeah.
in the middle of the third round because it was delayed until Sunday. Then he was like 9 over. He was playing really poorly and just could not walk really
I
at
mean,
that point. And you hate to see it. You hate to see
yeah.
it.
Is there a stay woke sheeple moment with Tiger, Dennis? The people are talking. Could he have been hamming it up a little bit? The injury, it's real easy to be injured when you're not playing well. Weather's bad. Could there have been a little bit of hamming it up, garnering some sympathy, perhaps? But I'm
I'm not gonna lie to you.
mostly kidding. But I mean, it's just kind of fun to speculate and be like, yeah, I'm sure it is kind of easy to, limp a little, you know, put a little more weight on that other foot, withdraw. I mean, it's sort of like one of those things where like you see it all the times, and like I saw it happen once in high school. I'll never forget it. I won't out this person. But like they got crossed up and then acted like they were hurt afterwards, and that like
Mm,
the reason they got crossed up was because they were already hurt. So it's one of those things where it's like when you're already playing bad. I mean, what easier excuse is there to point to than, nah, man, I just wasn't 100%. I was a little hurt. Obviously, Tiger is hurt, but it's just kind of goofy to point that out.
no, I agree with you. My first thought when I saw that he withdrew was gonna be that he withdrew simply because he was playing bad,
Oh yeah,
which happens. You get to that point in the tournament where some guys get so far out at 9, 10 over after making the cut, and they're just like, "I'm done."
it's just
You
not
know,
worth
like
it. Yeah,
we're phoning it in, and I wouldn't have blamed him if that was what he had done. But so I think in that sense, we don't know. You and I don't know, but there could be some validity to the
yeah,
storyline of playing up the injury a little bit. Like you said, obviously he is hurt,
yeah,
um,
yeah.
but
It's
he
always
looked
nice to
perfectly
have that
fine on Thursday and
excuse.
Friday. So
Correct, correct. It's nice. It's nice
So
to be able to have that excuse, Dennis. Also, shout out to who was it? Is it Sandy Lyle playing his last Masters? Was Sandy Lyle playing his
yes,
last Masters?
Sandy Lyle played his last Masters,
And Freddie
and
Couples
then
made the
Freddie
cut
Couples, baby.
again. Made the cut
Yep.
again. Is he the oldest golfer to make the cut? Was that what the record was? Because I know he also has
And
like
yeah,
an insane streak of Masters cut makes, but I thought this one specifically was about him being the oldest golfer to make the cut.
yeah, we had a couple of oldest records because I believe you're right. I believe it was Freddie Couples oldest to make the cut, and then Phil Mickelson is the oldest to finish. I believe top five. I
Yeah,
believe was the statistic in a Masters. So yeah, a couple of those that went down this week. Definitely shout out Sandy Lyle last Masters and Freddie Couples as well.
yeah, yeah. And then Tiger, this was his 23rd consecutive um, time making the cut at the Masters, and his 25th appearance all time. But his 23 consecutive cuts ties Gary Player and Fred Couples' records of most consecutive Masters cut finishes. So,
Yeah,
I mean,
because Tiger needed more records.
correct.
I
But I mean,
mean, that's insane.
yeah,
That's
definitely. It's
insane.
certainly a testament to, his willpower to just be like, man, if I can just make the cut, still show I can play competitive golf, but yeah, it's got to be tough on him. Got to be tough on him. Well, Dennis. Last question, then we can move on from the Masters. Um, will we ever see Tiger Woods use a cart, or will his pride not let it?
You mean like in a competitive event,
Yeah,
an
maybe
actual
not
PGA tournament?
probably not in a major, but maybe like the Rocket Mortgage in Detroit or something like that. Maybe one of the smaller events. Certainly, probably not a major. But do you think, just in general, do you think we'll ever see Tiger Woods in a cart?
Well, I mean, we did if you count the what is that, the Capital One match or whatever that they do with the
Nah, that doesn't count. That
you want to
doesn't
throw
count.
that in there when he played that back in October or whatever it was.
Yeah,
That's why I asked specifically
gotcha.
about the professional
Yeah,
events
we'll
because
leave it strictly to PGA Tour events.
no, I think his pride. I think he has too much pride for the game and the I will say like fairness of everybody is treated the same way. And like I think the only way that he would ride in a cart in an event if it was allowed for everyone in
Yeah,
that particular event, which is why he did it in the match. It's just not though. It's not a standard within the game of golf,
right.
especially the professional level. And so I don't think so. I don't think he's going to take something that is not allotted to his competitors.
I think you're probably right. I think you're probably right. Dennis, the NBA playoffs have started.
Yeah,
Well, I guess
just started.
technically not the NBA playoffs. It's still the play-in.
The play in,
Um,
the
but
play in.
but the
Yes.
intensity of the basketball is most certainly playoff basketball. We've had a couple results. Four games have been played. We've had the Lakers beat the Timberwolves. We had the Thunder beat the Pelicans. We had the Bulls beat the Raptors on the road. And we had the Hawks beat the Heat. I believe that is all of them that have occurred so far. Um, and I can't remember for sure if there are any playing games tonight. Um,
There are not any tonight. So the Hawks played, beating the Heat, got them the 7 seed. Likewise, the Lakers beating the T Wolves got them the 7 seed. And then the games on tomorrow night are for the 8 seed, I believe, right? It'll be the
yes,
8 seed playing game then,
I
which will
believe
be
so.
Bulls Heat and Thunder T Wolves.
Okay, so yeah, we can recap them a little bit. I'll be honest, Dennis, you know, basketball, not something me and you cover too closely, really. Uh, both of us watched at least the ending of that Lakers Timberwolves game. I didn't really get a chance to catch the Pels Thunder game or the uh, Hawks Heat game, and then I only really saw clips of the Bulls Raptors game. But all I know is this, Dennis. Here's what I know. We don't have to get into the analysis of all these teams and whether or not they're prepared, and capable of making a run in the playoffs. They're not, at least not from the games I watched. The Timberwolves and Lakers, there's a reason those two teams are where they are at in the Western Conference standings. I mean, that fourth quarter, as entertaining as it was, Dennis, and we talked about this a little bit before the pod started, as entertaining as it was, that was just garbage basketball. Turning the ball over late in the game, taking bad
Mm-hmm.
fouls, leaving Dennis Schroeder wide open in the corner to hit a last second three. The Timberwolves come back down, and Anthony Davis fouls Mike Conley shooting a three after they hadn't scored in 6 minutes. They hadn't scored a field goal in like 6 minutes. He's basically shooting from out of bounds. The ball goes off the side of the backboard. That's how bad of a shot it was. Anthony Davis fouls him on the landing. Mike Conley, absolute ice in the veins, nails all three to send it to overtime. And then the Timberwolves just couldn't score and kept turning the ball over. And Kyle Anderson sucks. He's sold. Torian Prince had a chance to hit that late three off the steal off the inbound, bricked it short, wasn't even close. Um, I mean, Torian Prince may have saved. I know Bob will get a kick out of this one. LeBron James's legacy was saved again because he threw an absolute garbage inbounds pass, the one that was stolen at the end of the game. And if Torian Prince hits that three and the Timberwolves go on to win that game, you best believe Skip Bayless would have had the time of his life. You best believe it, Dennis. Um, but yeah,
Absolutely.
I don't
Yeah.
know what your thoughts overall were on the play-in tournament. Obviously, in the Bulls Raptors game, DeMar DeRozan's daughter was a big, sensation. Uh, screaming bloody murder practically every time the Raptors shot free throws. You can argue that it kind of worked. The Raptors missed 18 free throws. Siakam missed two late in the last minute. Um, and free throws were the story of the game. And, I'm sure the players will never admit to it that that sort of distraction played their way into their free throw shooting at all, but you almost have to assume it did with how many free throws they missed. But yeah, I don't know if you have any thoughts on any of the four games or any of the points I brought up already.
Yeah, no, I think you hit it pretty well with that one though. Uh, I remember seeing that kind of thing like in high school, maybe a little bit, at the college level, but at the NBA for that to work is, emphasis on potential, I guess, potentially worked, but the statistics are present, which is interesting.
I mean,
The
you're a
only other thing I
statistics
had to
guy,
add,
Dennis. You do a lot of statistics.
that's right, tons of statistics, very important. Analytics,
Correct.
absolutely. Moneyball, all of that good fun jazz. The only thing I had to add, which I think I was talking a little bit about pre-podcast, was, and I found out who it was, the inbound pass from Herbert Jones
Mm,
from the New Orleans Pelicans, down by three with almost 3 seconds left in the game, a chance to tie it, and just throws it out of bounds on the inbound, and absolutely embarrassing. I mean,
correct.
misses a wide open. I mean, you're trying to get like the running start, which I understood he was trying to lead his guy into potentially a game tying shot with only 3 seconds left on the court, but just completely misses him. I
Yeah,
mean,
I think it was CJ
looking like
McCollum. I think CJ McCollum was the
I
guy.
think it was CJ McCollum. Um, yeah, I mean that's just I would
There's a
say, and you
reason those
touched on it with
teams
the
are in the
Lakers game
play-in,
too.
Dennis.
Sloppy, very sloppy all around. I didn't watch all of the games. I didn't watch all four games, and there's two more coming up. Maybe those are uh, a different story. But yeah, the word I would use for the couple that I watched, the clips that I've seen, would be sloppy.
Yeah, I think that's a fair
But
assessment.
entertaining. But entertaining at the same
Correct.
time. Not necessarily, and you basically exactly what you said when you opened up. You said, an entertaining product, but bad basketball.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, yeah, sloppy's a great way to put it. There's a reason these teams are in the play-in tournament, and it's not because don't let the media fool you. And I'm sorry again, Bobby Epler, uh, but don't let the media fool you. The Lakers are not a serious threat. to the top four teams. Maybe they're able to knock off the Grizzlies because the Grizzlies are a young team and they're going up against, LeBron and AD, Schroeder, guys who have been in the playoffs a lot and know what it takes to get through a 7 game series. But outside of that, I mean, I just don't see it. Just don't see it. They say never count out LeBron James, but the Lakers as a whole, they're just not a team that really, I don't think, scares a lot of teams, to be completely honest. And when you go into overtime down to the wire against the Timberwolves team without Rudy Gobert, regardless of how overrated he may be, he's still an important piece to their defense. Uh, I mean, just can't have it. Just can't have it. So hopefully we'll be able to get Bob back next week. He can talk a little bit more about the Lake Show, about LeBron, hype him up probably. But until then, I mean, there's a reason these teams are in the play-in tournament.
I got one
That
question for you, unless you're
Yeah.
maybe about to say it yourself. Any matchups, looking beyond the play-in, because I think we got actual series coming up maybe Saturday or Sunday that those start. So definitely before the next time we record, anything that catches your eye as particularly intriguing or must-watch TV.
Sure. So intriguing. Nothing in the Eastern Conference. If you're a betting man, I think there's a very strong chance. If I don't even know if there's a way to parlay this, but if there's a way to parlay the Bucks, Cavs, Celtics, and Sixers all winning their opening series, I would put money on that because I mean the Bucks are
Oh, I
not
bet you could do that.
the Bucks are not going to struggle with whoever the 8 seed is. The Celtics are not going to struggle with the Hawks. The Hawks play no defense. The Celtics play very good defense, and they also play very good offense. The Hawks just have a pretty good offense when Trae Young is playing really well. But you're not going to see Clint Capella getting 21 rebounds again. It's just not happening. The Sixers, if the Sixers are who the Sixers think they are, they should have no problem getting past Brooklyn. They should have no problem getting past Brooklyn. And then the New York Knicks, I mean, until the Knicks prove to me that they're not the Knicks of the 2000s, and they're not just an absolute, just a mid team. The Cavs are pretty good. Donovan Mitchell has quietly played really, really well this season. They've got a lot of really good young talent. So I don't see why the Cavs wouldn't win that. So overall, I think you might be able to go top four chalk there and get yourself a nice chunk of change. So since there won't be
I'm
garbage time
working on
takes
it.
your money. Are you working on it?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, since
I'm
there
working on it. I'm just curious.
yeah, yeah. While you're working on it, maybe you can give us the odds once you see it. But since there's no
Yeah.
garbage time takes your money segment with Bob being out, there's my 2 cents. Take the 1 through 4 seeds in the Eastern Conference. In terms of the Western Conference, again, I don't see the 8 seed making any sort of noise against the Denver Nuggets, the 1 seed. The Grizzlies Lakers is probably going to be the most intriguing. And to be fair, I think all of the Western Conference series outside of the Nuggets 8 seed matchup are going to be really good. The Suns and Clippers, you're going to have KD, Chris Paul, Devin Booker, DeAndre Ayton going up against a Clippers team that, Kawhi, Paul George, it's been too long. I don't even know who's all on the Clippers still. But they're the 5 seed. That should be a very good series. Obviously, mentioned earlier, the Grizzlies 2 seed against the Lakers, the 7 seed. That should be a good series. I mean, as much as I hate LeBron James, he's must see TV, and you just can't count him out in the playoffs, even if the Grizzlies are the 2 seed. And then the Kings Warriors series. I mean, you've got the Warriors coming in as the 6 seed, struggled with health all year, struggled on the road all year, but they're the Golden State Warriors, one of the best, if not the best franchise since like 2015, 2016, going up against a young upstart Sacramento Kings team that just absolutely took the Western Conference by storm. But again, another team that doesn't really play defense, and when the Warriors get hot, they They're like the sun. They're like the sun. Um, so I really think honestly, if you want to watch NBA playoff basketball, the Western Conference 4-5, 2-7, and 3-6 matchups, those are definitely the ones to watch.
All right, so I got some numbers for you. Perfect timing. Unfortunately, right now they only have the 2-7, 3-6, and 4-5 matchups because the 1-8 is not technically set
Right, makes
until tomorrow
sense.
night. But if you take those three, which I mean, I'm assuming throwing the Bucks to beat whoever the 8 seed is not going to increase this by much.
Probably
You're
not.
only looking at minus 130,
Oh,
which is tough. It's
that
tough,
is tough.
yeah, because you've got the Cavs are minus 205 to win the series, and then the Sixers are minus 1,000, and the Celtics are minus 1,200.
Wow.
So if you think
Vegas
the
is
opposite
really
of
high
Derek
on the
is going to happen here,
Sixers.
and you're going to fade any of these teams, you could pull in some cash because Vegas definitely thinks what you think, Derek.
Yeah, I mean
They
if
definitely think what you think.
yeah, the if the
The
Celtics are
Hawks are
minus
plus
12,
750 to beat the Celtics. They're plus 750.
that's crazy. I mean if the Celtics are minus 1200, you have to imagine the Bucks are going to be around 2000. I mean,
Yeah.
yeah, so darn. Unfortunately, not a ton of value there, but predict an upset series. Maybe you can get yourself a nice little. But I just don't see it. I don't see it.
For for fun, you got to guess on the Lakers Grizzlies series odds.
150 Grizzlies.
142 minus 142.
Ooh, I'm locked
Lakers
in.
plus 120.
I'm
Yeah,
locked
that's
in,
locked in right there.
Dennis. Yeah,
That's nice.
that's the LeBron effect. So, if you are really, really confident in either one of those two teams, um, you could make yourself a lot of money if you're right. Like if you're really confident in the Grizzlies, um, and you're like, oh man, minus 120, it's basically a steal. You're pretty close to doubling your money at minus 120. So if you felt really good about that, you could even throw the Grizzlies in the Eastern Conference parlay. Maybe that's what we should do. Maybe we should just do throw the Grizzlies in there because that should up the value a little bit on the Eastern Conference parlay. What happens then,
Yeah,
Dennis?
if you throw that in there, then you get to essentially plus 200.
Yeah, yeah. So hey, we are by no means gambling experts on this podcast. By no
No,
means. By no means.
full disclosure.
I'll pull up the stats from season one of Garbage Time Takes Your Money. 49% win percentage for uh, me, 52.94% for Dennis, and 47.16% for Bob. So we are as 50-50 as it gets on this podcast.
Yeah, I can only ever pull in money betting on golf. That's the only time I can pull in money, which I
And you
did.
know,
Thank you,
Dennis,
John Rahm. Thank you, John Rahm.
and you know what? If that's your niche, that's your niche. And you don't have to get a live t-shirt. You don't have to get a live t-shirt. Massive.
Yeah.
Yeah. But other than that, I don't really have much more to add about the NBA. Do yourself a favor and watch the playoffs if you're not a fan of regular season NBA basketball, because it truly is. It almost looks like they're playing a completely different sport in the playoffs. I enjoy watching playoff basketball. The only other league entering playoffs, Dennis, before we talk a little about MLB, the NHL. The NHL regular season has officially concluded. My Detroit Red Wings bowed out of the playoff race pretty early, but later than last year. So progress was made. Progress was made. I believe they have like a 6% chance of landing Connor Bedard, the Connor Bedard sweepstakes. Um, I actually couldn't tell you the top 8 teams in either side are. There's really only one story I wanted to get to, and that is screw you, Sidney Crosby, screw you, Evgeny Malkin, and screw you, Pittsburgh Penguins. You can suck my nuts. Your team is garbage. Your team is mid. You lost to the Chicago Blackhawks with a chance to clinch the playoffs the playoffs on the line and you lose to the Chicago Blackhawks, a team that isn't even trying to win and snap the longest playoff streak out of all four major sports. What was it, 16 seasons or something?
Something crazy like that, yeah.
The Detroit Red Wings playoff streak lives on, is in no danger for the foreseeable future of being broken. And I think finally, Dennis, the Pittsburgh Penguins are going to have to rebuild. Finally.
I mean, it's about time. It's about time, Derek. I am obviously not the most experienced hockey. I can't give you the most experienced hockey analysis, but I am tired of those guys. And anytime that you're gonna, dish on the city of Pittsburgh and its sports teams, I'm on board with it. Doesn't matter who it is
I
or which
mean,
one it
Dennis,
is.
there's no
Doesn't
originality.
matter.
Every team is black and yellow. Every
They're
team
all the
is
same
black and
colors,
yellow.
which makes them so easy to hate all of them. It makes
Correct.
it so easy to hate all of them because if you hate the Steelers, then you see the same dang colors when you watch the Pirates and the Penguins play, and it just makes perfect sense to throw in the hatred there too. And
Correct.
Sidney Crosby wasn't. I'm remembering a specific moment. Maybe you can enlighten me from like maybe 2 years ago, where he essentially like had tripped some guy from the bench like during a playoff game,
Oh,
and or there was speculation that he had like stuck his stick out and tripped him, and there was the whole thing. Dirty. I mean, just all sorts of stuff going on. I mean, what are we doing?
I mean, yeah, as
Horrible.
as someone who, as a Red Wings fan, 2007, 2008, the Red Wings and the Penguins, back to back years battling out for the Stanley Cup. Back to back years, we got them once, they got us once. And all of, it's sort of, I imagine the way I felt about the Penguins in the early 2000s were the way fans 8, 10, 12 years older than me felt about the Avalanche in the early mid 90s. Uh, hated them, still hate them. Screw Boston too. Although of course Boston set the regular season win record, which was
They did.
absolutely insane season for Boston. Um, I don't even want to talk about it because I hate Boston. Uh, and plus we're celebrating the downfall of the Pittsburgh Penguins, and that's all that matters. So if there are people out there watching this podcast that are really looking for NHL playoff analysis, unfortunately, I don't really got any for you. The Boston Bruins certainly look like the team to beat. They've been playing good all year. They have a stacked roster. This is pretty much their last run with their salary cap situation the way it is, I'm pretty sure. Um, so, yeah, I guess I can also say disappointing season for the Calgary Flames. Some off-season roster shakeup. You thought maybe they'd be able to replace the loss of a couple stars that they lost, Kachuk specifically. Or no. Oh shoot, what happened there? They lost Johnny Gaudreau, right? Did they lose Johnny Gaudreau? Forgot. This is again. I don't claim to be a super.
That sounds right.
I don't claim to be a super locked in NHL guy. I know the Flames lost some guys in the offseason, but they brought some guys in. Yeah, that's what they did. They traded. I just gotta look it up. I thought they had a massive trade with the
Yeah.
Panthers, is what I thought. What happened, Dennis? What happened? So Matthew Kachuk
Another about
is
tell
on the
me. Let's tell me.
Panthers. Matthew Kachuk is on the Panthers. Yep, here it is. Oh, not Johnny Gaudreau, Jonathan Huberdeau. You can see how I could
Yeah,
get
the
that
names are a
mixed
little
up.
tricky. Yeah. Yeah.
Um, they let Gaudreau go to Columbus, is what happened, and then they traded Matthew Kachuk to the Panthers in exchange for Jonathan Huberdeau, Mackenzie Weegar, and Cole Schwint, and a lottery-protected first-round pick in 2025. So yeah, big off-season roster shakeup for the Flames. Unfortunately, um, they just couldn't get it together. I believe they missed the playoffs this year. Uh,
They
to,
did. So
and
I'm looking at the matchups right now.
Go for
Um,
it.
and ironically, Boston's going to get the Florida Panthers, team we just
Mhm.
mentioned in that trade. So that's a little ironic. Calgary not in the picture. Couple interesting things, at least on my end. The Seattle Kraken making the
Yes.
picture. They will be the top wild card out in the West and play. It looks like the Dallas Stars,
Okay. Should be a good series.
and then also one of Bobby's favorites, the Vegas Golden Knights, back in the
Yes.
playoff picture once again. Shout out to the expansion teams. They played the Winnipeg Jets. It looks like.
Yeah, I
So
mean, I tell you what, I didn't really pay again when the Red Wings started sucking really bad. It became hard to really keep track of the
yeah,
NHL and pay too much attention to it. But I tell you what, the Western Conference playoffs are a gauntlet, an absolute
the
gauntlet.
Edmonton Oilers with Connor McDavid, and I know that that's so generic to say and not deep analysis, but I mean that guy is crazy good.
I mean, you've got you've
There's talent all across the board. The
I mean,
Avalanche.
seven of the 8 teams are at 100 points or more. The
That's
West,
crazy.
the Pacific Division, from one seed from first through fourth in the division, are separated by 9 points. Two teams at 109, the Kings at 102, and the Kraken at 100. And then you have the Central Division, the Stars at 108, Avs at 107, Wild at 103, and the Jets at 95. So you have like 6 or 7 teams that are all essentially on the same playing field as each other. They're all basically level with each other. And then in the East, the Hurricanes,
We
Devils,
got Boston.
Rangers, they're all relatively within the same sort of skill range 113, 112, 107 points. The Maple Leafs are certainly going uh, to maybe Toronto will finally win something. Probably not because they suck. But they finished the season with 111 points. But definitely the story of the year is Boston. I mean, you win 65 games, 135 points on the season, a goal differential of 128. They had a bigger goal differential. Their goal differential was higher than any other team had points. Than any other team had points, Dennis.
That's nuts.
128. 128. Um, I mean, the next highest goal differential in the Eastern Conference is the New Jersey Devils at 65. So almost exactly double the goal differential the Boston Bruins have. So they're just an absolute juggernaut, absolutely stacked, easily the favorite to come out of the East. Granted, there's always the chance for the upset. It's a 7 game series. Someone can get injured, someone can get suspended, anything can happen. A goalie can get the yips. Um, but yeah, Bruins, Leafs, Lightning, Panthers coming out of the Atlantic, Hurricanes, Devils, Rangers, Islanders. The Islanders somehow sneak into the final spot from the Metropolitan Division, taking it away from the Penguins, who once again, if I didn't mention already, choked down the stretch. Um, I mean, you can't lose to the Blackhawks 5-2 at home. At home, Dennis, with the playoffs on the line, you lose 5-2. Sayonara, Pittsburgh. Thanks, but no thanks. What, verbal meme, my brother's wedding, and my pajamas and t shirt, Pittsburgh Penguins downfall. Dressed to the nines, baby. Dressed to the nines. Dennis, any other thoughts on the NHL playoffs before we move into a little MLB talk and then the rest of our segments?
No, I don't think I have too much. What was I going to say? Oh, you're talking about Boston. They reminded me of a couple years ago when the Tampa Bay Lightning were sort of that juggernaut, not to this extent, and then lost four straight to Columbus.
Correct? Anything can
Uh,
happen.
so yeah, just goes to say, anything can happen. Um, Obviously not the most well versed in hockey. If I was going to throw out a random Stanley Cup at this point, I don't think you can go. I don't think you can bet against Boston
No,
and feel
certainly.
good about it.
Certainly.
So probably Boston, and then that the West is so tough. It's going to be some really good series. I'm gonna go with Edmonton though.
Okay, Connor McDavid finally gets to
Yeah,
the finals. Is
yeah.
that's the story,
We'll
Dennis?
finally say he gets him over the edge. We'll go for the storylines. Um,
Wow.
but I'll tell you, just like we mentioned with the NBA, when it comes to playoff time, the Stanley Cup playoffs are hard to miss. I mean, that is when
Yeah,
The stars shine their brightest, and it's just entertaining. I always love this time of year for um, to watch hockey and finally get into it, even though I haven't been paying attention to it all year.
yeah, definitely. No, totally agree. Yeah, the MLB Dennis. Um, we're only at 45 minutes. We're doing pretty good. We're doing pretty good on time. So we can take this out as long or as little as we want to. Initially, I was just thinking about keeping it mostly to talking about our teams, and then maybe we can talk about a couple surprises that we were talking about
Sure.
before the show started. But if you want, feel free to, spout off on the Reds, Dennis. Spout off.
Uh,
Is
there's a
David
lot to
Bell
talk
is
about.
David
I
Bell the
mean,
manager of the future?
no, I mean, like I told you the other night, Derek, I believe we were chatting about baseball, and I said the Reds have the wrong David at the helm. And I know that you have your problems with David Ross, but
Many.
David Bell frustrates me to no end. I know I've mentioned it on this podcast before, and sure, most teams probably have problems with their managers. It's an easy person to blame, and it's
Yeah,
an
they're an
easy
easy
person to
scapegoat.
escape. Yeah, to throw things on and throw blame on. Sure, all those things are true, but he just makes some decisions that baffle me. He has the last couple of years, um, specifically with pulling starting pitching too early in the game, and I think there's been numerous occasions this year where he turned things over to the bullpen and immediately collapsed. Luckily, tonight was not one of those. He let Lodolo um, kind of cruise a little bit. His pitch count unfortunately got high, and he kind of had to turn it over to the pen. And then the pen actually showed up and sealed our 6-2 victory over the Philadelphia Phillies. But we just got swept by the Braves right before that, which was ugly. And some really good starting pitching performances. Really good from Hunter Green, really good outing again from Graham Ashcraft. The starting pitching has overperformed, but once again, the storyline with this team, at least for me, is bullpen comes in and things get real shaky. On top of at times inconsistent offensive production. Um, it feels like several times this year we've either gotten out to early leads and then completely folded, or we've come back from like 2 or 3 down to tie it and then just blow it in extras or blow it in the bottom of the ninth, which is very frustrating and really hard to watch when your team plays like that. But there's been some good things. Like I mentioned, the starting pitching, those big three. I used that
Loosely.
very loosely, very, very loosely. I'm not making any statements about the actual, superstar talent of these individuals. But for as far as the Reds go, in the current construction of the roster, Hunter Green, Nick Lodolo, Graham Ashcraft have performed very well. The big surprise has been Jason Vossler, which is probably a name that nobody knows. He's been filling in mostly at first with Votto on the mend. And he has cooled off a little bit as of lately, but started out pretty strong.
Yeah, he terrorized
Some
the
of the younger
Cubs.
guys. Yes, yeah, he started the Pittsburgh and Chicago series. He sort of tore it up a little bit, which you love to see that. And then, the thing I will say about this team as well, and then I'll kind of get off my soapbox and see, what's happening in Chicago is wow, completely lost my train of thought there. Oh, Nick Senzel is back. So that is
Oh,
very interesting. A lot of guys coming back. He had his first start tonight. I'm just gonna check in and see what he did. I was watching earlier, and I know he struck out in his first at bat, but shocker there. Nick Senzel is back from injury. Joey Votto very close to returning. It's going to be interesting to see what they do with him because we have had some production at first
and
from Jason Vossler.
he has been dog water in his rehab assignments. I don't know if you had a chance to look at his stats at all. He was what, 4 for 32 with 20 strikeouts or something ridiculous like that. It was crazy how much he was striking out in his rehab
Yeah, he
assignment.
hit a home run in his very first at bat at Louisville, and everyone made a big deal about it. And then he's done nothing since then.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, I know he was striking out in over 50% of his at bats, which is crazy for someone who's been known to put the ball in play like Joey Votto does.
And we had a good old 0 for 4 with 2 strikeouts from Nick Senzel today. So,
That huge.
um, yeah, it's tough for me to really know how to feel about this because I feel like the guys that we've had in these roles that aren't the regular players, um, you know, TJ Friedel, Kevin Newman, Jake Fraley for sure is probably going to be in the lineup more days than not, regardless. But Jason Vossler have been playing well enough, and then you just send them to the bench for the guys who are supposed to be your staples, and then you actually might just get worse. Like that,
Right.
I feel like that. But you can't not play Joey Votto because
Correct.
he's on a 10-year contract for however many millions of dollars. So you kind of get stuck, and that's my fear for this team is that the guys that I want to see playing that maybe they're not as talented, but they have that drive and that heart and the passion are just not going to be in the lineup enough.
Yeah. I mean, speaking of guys returning from injury, the Cubs are finally getting some reinforcements in their lineup. I made a big deal about it either last week or 2 weeks ago that the
Yeah,
Cubs were
usually
only.
getting guys back is a good thing.
Yep, and the
Yeah.
Cubs were only carrying the what I made a big deal about was the Cubs only carrying two outfielders, two true outfielders on their opening day roster. They still, up until earlier this week, only had two true outfielders. They ended up calling up Nelson Velasquez. Not sure why he wasn't up to start the season anyway, but disregard. Seiya Suzuki. Seiya Suzuki has played a couple rehab games with the Iowa Cubs, AAA Iowa Cubs. Um, Statement from our GM Jed Hoyer was that he was going to play April 11th and April 12th. They were going to see how he felt, and then perhaps he'd be ready to go to LA for our series against the Dodgers that starts technically today when this podcast goes up on Friday. Um, so that's big. We'll finally have a true right fielder in right field, not this hodgepodge smorgasbord of garbage that was Patrick Wisdom, Miles Masterboni, aka Master Boner. And as much as I'm a fan of Trey Mancini, he's not an outfielder. He's not an outfielder. He's far too slow, far too slow. And this ain't Little League, Dennis. You can't just stick anyone in right field in the majors. It doesn't work like that. The Cubs got burned multiple
Oh,
times.
I'm
Multiple
familiar with
times.
the inadequacies of Trey Mancini after drafting him in fantasy.
Correct. Well, offensively, he's starting to put it together. He had a really strong series against
Okay,
Seattle. But I'm talking even more defensively.
yeah. Okay, okay.
There were a lot of balls that landed in right field where you think that a true right fielder would have made those plays. Far too many to count. Additionally, the Cubs did not have a left-hander, the bullpen, to start the season. Not a single one. They finally got their left-hand reliever back from injury as well. Um, Ian Happ was not injured, but the Cubs announced a contract extension, which was massive news. Absolutely massive news. He actually took a little bit of a hometown discount to stay. Um, so I guess that sort of puts to rest the Jed Hoyer refuses to sign contract extensions for his core players. I mean, to be fair, he shipped off Javi Baez, Chris Bryant, Anthony Rizzo, and Wilson Contreras. And then all the other relief pitchers that we'd signed to 1 to 2 year deals to flip them at the deadline. Um, but yeah, Ian Happ will be a Cub for at least 4 more years, I believe. He signed a 3 year contract extension that goes into, and maybe it's only three, signed a 3 year contract extension that goes into effect next year. We also extended Nico Horner earlier this year. We've got Seiya Suzuki through 2026 as well. So the Cubs have a little bit of a core signed through the next 3 years. They've gotten out to a pretty decent start. They're right around 500 right now, took 2 out of 3 from the Mariners, which was big because the Mariners are a team that a lot of people think could come out of the AL West with at least a wild card spot, certainly. And yeah, it's been up and down for David Ross. I feel like he's been a little bit better this last week, although for some reason he still keeps pitching Julian Merriweather. That dude needs to be DFA'd immediately. immediately. He should have been DFA'd yesterday. Dude sucks. Dude sucks. Um, and I always say like these guys don't really suck because they're in the MLB and they're like the top 0.01% of baseball players in the entire world. Comparatively to his peers, he sucks. He sucks and he should be DFA'd. Um, Jameson Taillon sucks. Sucks. Hayden Wesneski has struggled to start the year. Young pitcher that we got last year for. Oh, who did we trade to get Wesneski? I can't remember. We traded a reliever. I believe he came over from the Yankees. He either came over in the Yankees trade or the White Sox trade. I can't remember which one. But he's been hit pretty hard to start the year, which is a bit unfortunate with him trying to be our fifth guy in the rotation. But Marcus Stroman has looked really, really good to start the year, which has been good to see. Drew Smiley has had a good outing and a poor outing. Uh, Tyone is just not very good. And then Justin Steele, Dennis. Justin Steele has been shoving.
Justin Steele.
He is a man that threw a no-hitter against the Milwaukee Brewers last year. Um, and then we're still waiting on Kyle Hendricks to come back. Kyle Hendricks has been injured since last year. I don't think he started any rehab assignments yet, but we'll be getting him back at some point. Unfortunately, our 5 through 9 and the lineup is just horrible. Horrible. It rivals the Tigers in how bad it is. I mean, Cody Bellinger, just not very good. Just not very good right now. We're getting absolutely nothing offensively out of the catcher position from either Jan Gomes or Reds legend Tucker Barnhart.
Oh no, not Tucker.
Tucker is
Oh no,
providing
not Tucker.
absolutely nothing offensively. Absolutely nothing.
Yeah,
We
well,
were
he doesn't. That's this whole thing.
correct. Patrick Wisdom is either hitting a home run or striking out. And then we were getting absolutely nothing out of right field. Trey Mancini has been a lot better when he's been either at first base or DH. Eric Hosmer has actually not been terrible. He was really good in the Seattle series. Um, and then Miles Mastrobuoni is absolutely worthless. So there's a chance. There's a
There,
chance that this offense starts to pick it up now that we've got some reinforcements coming.
what's up with these NL West retreads just sucking on the Cubs and Reds now? And Will Myers, I forgot to say this when my rant. Horrible right now. Horrible. He
Correct.
had a better night tonight. Maybe he's going to get out of the slump. He's just been ugly. Um, oh, I'm not trusting the NL West with anything else after this. I mean, come on.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, Hosmer came over from the Padres. Bellinger from the Dodgers.
Bellinger, yep.
Um, I mean, just the West and then you got Trey Mancini coming over from the AL West with the Astros. I mean, just can't win.
There you go.
Can't win with the West, Dennis. Can't win with the West. They're not
No,
used to this
no,
Midwest
can't trust
cold
it.
weather. Although Trey Mancini really has no excuse because he played so many years in Baltimore.
In Baltimore,
But
yeah.
besides the point, the Cubs should be better in their lineup. Dennis, what the heck was the scheduling for the early season for the Cubs and Reds? I think we talked about it a little bit last week. But why are the Cubs
Yes.
having so many home games in April? How does that make any sense? Why is Seattle coming to Chicago April 9 through 11? Why are the Texas Rangers coming to Chicago April 5th through 8th? Why are the
It's snow
Cubs
baseball, Derek.
Why are the
Nothing better.
Cubs going to Cincinnati April 1st through 3rd and then they get a game rained out? Like, it doesn't make any sense, Dennis. It does not make any sense why they scheduled it that way. You guys are still playing in the Midwest / Northeast. You have, were the Braves at home or in Atlanta?
The Braves were in Atlanta, so
Oh,
that made
so
some
that's
sense, at least.
fortunate. But you're playing the Phillies at home, right?
Yeah, so we just went to Philly. We went to Philly and Atlanta. So it started home Pittsburgh, home Chicago, went to Philly, went to Atlanta, and now we have Philly at home.
Horrible, horrible scheduling.
And then we have the Tampa Bay Rays at home in Cincinnati.
Again, horrible. Send Cincinnati to
Oh, man.
Tropicana Field, dang it. It is early April. It could snow literally any day. Literally any day it could decide to
It could.
snow. But yeah, I
Which
just
there's a perfect transition if you want it. Go ahead and finish your thoughts though.
no, I was just gonna say I just don't get it. Transition, Dennis. Transition.
The Tampa Bay Rays. That's the story of baseball, Derek. 13-0. Best, I could be wrong. Best start in, is it now officially the record for best start in modern history? Or
I believe they're tied. No,
tied? Okay.
I
Tied
believe I
now.
believe
I
two
know
teams were at 13. I think. I think. Let's
I
see.
know for sure that they set the franchise record for winning streak at any point in the season. I know that for sure, which is crazy to open at 13-0 and then set your winning streak record. Um, Derek fact checking the MLB record possibilities here, but it just doesn't get any better than this. And it's how they're winning these games, Derek. Plus 71 run differential. Plus
Killing it.
71.
Yeah, they've
I
just
mean, they aren't just winning games; they are beating down teams.
yeah, and I mean,
Quite literally.
and to be fair, the detractors do have a small point. They're not out there beating world
The
beaters.
schedule.
They're not out
The
there beating
schedule.
world beaters, but you beat who's on your schedule, and teams deserve credit for beating up on bad teams. Anybody can lose to anybody in the MLB. That's the way. That's the way of the show. Um,
No.
so I personally think the Rays deserve credit for sweeping the Tigers. The Astros didn't sweep the Tigers. The Blue Jays aren't going to sweep the Tigers, but the Rays swept the Tigers. The Rays swept the Red Sox. The Rays swept whoever else they've dropped their sack on. Um, so yeah, I think that's a little bit weak sauce for people who say, point to the schedule. If it was that easy, more teams in history would have started the season 13-0. Because I'm sure there have been teams that have had soft schedules to open the year. But yes, the fact check, they are playing Toronto today, and if they win, that will set the new record for modern era, aka post 1900s baseball. 14-0 will be the new record. 13-0 is a tie with the 1982 Atlanta Braves and 1987 Milwaukee Brewers. So they are currently in a tie
Okay.
with
Yep.
those two teams. The only longer opening streak to a season was 20-0 in 1884 by the St. Louis Maroons of the Union Association. Uh, so modern,
Wow.
so modern era
Wow.
14-0 would be the new record. I mean, they just dominate teams. They dominate teams offensively. They dominate teams with their starting pitching, with their bullpen. I don't understand. I mean, they are the model small market organization, Dennis. I think I was talking.
They
I
really
can't
are.
remember if we talked about this
We
last
talked about
week.
it last week.
We did talk about it last
Yeah.
week. I can't remember if we talked about it last week or if I talked about it
7
with
wins
Bob the
ago.
week before. Yes, they just develop, Dennis. They develop. They get rid of guys when they need to get picks, to get young prospects. And I mean, Tyler Glasnow's still hurt. He's still hurt. He hasn't pitched for them. Shane McClanahan, absolutely electric. Spriggs, absolutely electric. Um, I mean, you can go up and down the starting rotation. Wander Franco's been playing great. I wish he would have done this for me last year. Thanks for nothing, Wander. Randy Arozarena, absolutely lighting it up. Yandy Diaz hitting 300. Manuel Margot hit a or not a grand slam, but cleared the bases with a double couple games ago to give the Rays a lead in a tight game. I mean, Taylor Walls was hitting 300. Brandon Lau, thanks for nothing last year. Brandon Lau all of a sudden decides he's going to be a silver slugger to start the year. I mean, they just get it done, and their bullpen doesn't give up runs, and they close out games. They just win, Dennis. I mean, no one ever talks about the Rays as the team to beat coming out of the American League. A lot of talk about the Yankees, which is fair. A lot of talk about the Astros, which is certainly fair. But I mean, is it fair to say the AL East runs through Tampa Bay? I know it's early, Dennis. I know it's early, and they can't even get 70% capacity at the Trop for most of their games. But does the AL East run through Tropicana Field in Tampa Bay, Dennis? St. Petersburg, excuse me. They don't even play in Tampa Bay.
Yeah, no, I was going to ask you the same thing. And my question was going to be similar. Is it legit? Is this legit?
I think so.
Is this team going to dominate? Obviously, not in an undefeated fashion, but are they going to dominate this season in the AL East? I think the answer is probably yes.
Especially,
Call me
I mean, not to cut you off, but
recency bias, but
yeah, not to cut you off, and I'll let you keep going. But especially with the reduction in games played within your division, the AL East is pretty good this year. Baltimore is good this year. They could play for a wild card. Toronto certainly could be in a wild card position as well. The Yankees, obviously a very good team. I mean, the AL East could send 4 teams to the playoffs easily, easily. Um, but yeah, so just a little side note there.
yeah, and I haven't watched a ton of Tampa Bay Rays baseball, so caveat there. But it feels like to me, and as you were talking, became even more apparent. This is just a well-rounded team, and obviously you can point to the pitching, you can point to the relief pitching, um, but even just 1 through 9 up and down their lineup, you were just talking about the Cubs about how okay, our 5 through 9 sucks. Like
Yeah,
we have a few guys that can produce, and then what are you going to do? And that's a lot of teams across baseball. They have a few stars, they have a few big names, or young guys that can get things done at the top and in the middle of their lineups, and then they're just handcuffed. This lineup is, I mean, maybe you could say, emerging star Wander Franco. Maybe you could make an argument for Randy Rosarina. It doesn't really have any stars, Derek. There's no
yeah, not in the
Mookie
traditional
Betts. There's no
sense.
Juan Soto.
They have
There's no
star.
Bryce Harper.
Yeah, they have stars, but not superstars.
And that's why they're so successful, if you ask. And that's why they're also such a great model for the small market teams because you're not going to sign $100 million contracts um, to multiple players and build super rosters. You're just not going to do it. I would guess I don't know exactly. I would guess a lot of these guys came through the farm system, and I know we spoke to that in previous episodes, which is just a further testament to their organization and how it's run as a whole. That's the model. That's the model.
Yeah,
If any
instead of
team of
developing
that
your
size is going to have success, it has to be this way.
yeah, instead of like the Cincinnati Reds and Pittsburgh Pirates do, develop your players in
Yep.
the farm and then trade them when it's time to give them a contract extension. The
Yep.
Rays are able to extend them, and very similar to the Atlanta Braves, extend them at a reasonable price that doesn't handcuff the rest of the roster. And it probably helps that they don't really have, like we said, any true superstars. They don't have a Manny Machado, a Juan Soto, a Mookie Betts, Freddie Freeman, Austin Riley, Ronald Acuna. You can go on and on. Um, but it also helps when you don't trade away your homegrown talent, like
Yep.
some other markets have done. Yeah, definitely.
Yep. It's just proof, and it's encouraging and fun for me to watch that there's more than one way to succeed in this league, and you don't have to pay for Juan Soto, Manny Machado, and Mookie Betts on the same
And
roster
Xander
to have any
Bogarts.
success. And yeah, Xander Bogarts. Yeah.
And have Fernando Tatis waiting in the wings. And have Joe Musgrove. And have you
as
Darvish.
as as fun as that is, the Padres aren't 13-0.
Correct? Correct.
It's just
They're
um
not even first in
and
their
they just lost
division.
again tonight.
That belongs to the Arizona Diamondbacks, Dennis. The Arizona
What's
Diamondbacks.
happening, Derek? What's
Eight and
happening?
five.
I
I
mean,
mean,
baseball, it's
it's
crazy right now.
I mean the Diamondbacks, a lot of young talent. A lot of young talent in Arizona.
A
I
lot
mean
of young talent.
Corbin Carroll, Christian Walker isn't necessarily young, but I had him on my fantasy team last year. Dude hits tanks. Josh Rojas is fairly
Yep.
good, but really where Arizona's been, at least from everything I've understood, starting pitching has been really solid. I mean, Zach Gallen, dude never, for
Yep,
some reason,
absolutely.
gets brought up as one of the best pitchers in the NL. He's a bona fide Cy Young candidate. I'm pretty sure. I'm pretty sure he placed top five last year in Cy Young. I could be just Mandela affecting myself. But Zach Allen is really good. Merrill Kelly. can be pretty good. Yeah, they have a lot of unknown pieces, a lot of young guys eager to get to get in the show and stay there. And they're just a fun team. Right in my backyard. Uh, Cubs come out here sometime this summer. I'm hoping to get up there for a game. Um, yeah, the Diamondbacks, a massive surprise. The Cardinals, a surprise, but in a bad way
Yes,
for
a
them,
rough start.
but a good way for us because screw St. Louis, they suck.
Absolutely,
Um,
absolutely.
I mean, last place to start the year, their rotation is awful. Their starting rotation is awful. I mean, when Jordan Montgomery is your ace, and maybe I made a mistake in dropping him, it's a mistake I'm willing to live with. Uh, when Jordan Montgomery is your ace, you're in trouble. I mean, Jack Flaherty still struggles with control. Miles Mikolas sucks. Dude is washed.
I would say just struggles
Yeah, just
in the sentence there,
yes. I don't even remember who the other two pitchers in their rotation are. But
and
I
that's all
mean,
you need to know.
their bullpen is really not that good outside of Ryan Helsley. And you would think that with all their offensive firepower, they could largely overcome it, but they just have not been very good. Wilson Contreras, screw you, buddy. Grass ain't always greener. He's been not very good for them at all. Maybe his fortunes will change at some point, but I mean, there's a reason. There's a reason why Cubs starting pitching ERA was nearly 1.5 to 2 full points lower when Wilson Contreras was not catching for them. I mean, you had guys with 4.5 ERAs when Wilson was their catcher and 2.8, 2.9 ERAs when Yan Gomes was their catcher. So I don't know how much of the blame goes on Wilson calling games, game plans, just understanding the flow of the game, and how much of it is actually their pitchers just suck in general. I'm sure it's a combination of both. But I, for one, am not at all disappointed to see the Cardinals sucking it up early in the season, Dennis.
No, not at all. Not at all. I don't know about you. I guess you would probably say, I think in previous conversations that the Chicago North or Wrigley North would probably be your primary rival, but for the Cincinnati Reds, it's the St. Louis Cardinals.
Yeah,
And amongst
ours is definitely St. Louis. The Brewers have sort of come on as of late just because they've gotten better. But I would definitely say the
yeah,
Cardinals are still our true rival. But the Brewers are certainly up there. Good old Wrigley North. Love that place.
yeah, the Cardinals. I mean, the long days of Albert Pujols and obviously Adam Wainwright and oh gosh, I'm trying to think of somebody specific and it's not coming to me, but well, obviously Yachty was a pain in the behind for years and years and years. Uh, yeah, it's good to see them struggle. I don't know how long it'll last. You outlined a lot of reasons that it could, which I hope come true. I would love to sit above them in the standings this year. If both of us could, I would have no
Correct.
problem with that.
Yeah,
But
definitely.
we shall see. One thing I wanted to ask you about, and I know it's early, and so it's kind of hard to know this and get into this discussion, but just as I look through the standings here, um, there's a lot more parity in the American League. The National League, everyone is between currently 4-9 and 9-4. Um, every single team in the league. Meanwhile, on the AL side, you've got 3-win Detroit, 3-win Oakland, 13-win Tampa Bay. Uh, is the American League going to be more top heavy? And is that indication that it is the better league, or is the National League just good and beating up on each other?
Yeah. I I think
Have to know.
I think the AL will be top heavy, but I don't think it'll make them any better than the better teams in the National League. I think the National League is probably a deeper league this year. I mean, the Mets are going to be good. The Phillies are good. The Braves are good. The Dodgers are good. The Padres are good. The Cardinals suck right now, but they're supposed to be good. The Brewers, one of the best starting rotations in baseball. That carries you a long way. Um,
I think, and if I get what you're saying, I agree. the
Yeah.
bad teams in the National League aren't as bad
Right. Yeah. It's sort of like the Big
as
Ten
the
in
bad teams in the
basketball.
American League.
It's sort of like the Big Ten
Yeah.
in basketball. This past year, the Big Ten in basketball, there were no free nights. Minnesota was probably the closest thing you could get to a free night. But if you didn't bring it against Nebraska, against Michigan, against Maryland, against Rutgers, against Penn State, against anyone, literally anyone
Yeah.
but Minnesota, you were going to lose. You were going to lose. And I feel like that's a lot of that can be said for the National League. They're just, I mean, even the Pirates have started out on
And yeah,
fire this year. The D backs, perennial bottom feeders, the D backs are starting out on fire this year. I mean, really, the worst team is the Nationals, which is no surprise because they just suck in general. And I don't really know what to make the Marlins this early in the season. They've just kind of struggled. And the Rockies, it's hard to make anything of them. But I mean, the NL West could be very deep. The NL East is certainly deep. The NL Central, probably realistically too deep at most. But compare that to the AL, I mean, the AL East is really good in the AL. The AL Central is weaker than weak. I mean, realistically, the Twins and Indians will probably be fighting for the top two spots. And then the AL West, it's hard to make out what will be the Rangers. Um, they
yes.
add Jacob DeGrom, they add another couple guys, Andrew Haney, a couple other guys, but they were a team that wasn't even really close to making the playoffs last year. And then you've got the Mariners, who they add Teoscar Hernandez. They rallied late in the season last year to get into the wild card. Uh, they should be better this year. They're struggling early. The Angels, I mean, poor Mike Trout and Shohei Ohtani. They
Let's
don't.
say, are they finally gonna go somewhere?
I mean, they're the
Is
top of
this
the AL
finally the
West right
year?
now. They're the top of the AL
Uh,
West right now, which is
technically,
crazy.
technically,
Um, I mean, the Astros have started out slow to start the year. It's interesting. The AL is really interesting, but I do feel like the NL is the deeper league, um, and probably can rival the AL in terms of like most high end talent. I mean, the Phillies, they really struggled to open the year, but I mean, once Harper comes back, Harper, Schwarber, Trey Turner,
yeah.
Castellanos, JT Realmuto, Alec Baum. I mean, that is a deep 7 out of 9 guys in the lineup right there. Um, the Braves are obviously the Braves. The Padres are obviously the Padres. The Dodgers are obviously the Dodgers. I mean, those lineups can rival any lineup with any other team in the league. And I just don't think there are a lot of AL teams where you can say the same thing. Um,
No, I completely agree with you. I think that that's a very, very good and accurate analysis. And I mean, just as I kind of scan through these teams a little bit, I think that potentially the reason that you could say that the National League is deeper is because those teams towards the bottom,
are
maybe not
overperforming to
Washington,
start the year.
maybe not Colorado. Yes, they're overperforming to start the year, but I also think that it's because they're a little bit further along in the rebuilding process. Pittsburgh, sure, it's a lot of young guys, but O'Neal Cruz had some experience last year.
Although he's
Um,
done, which sucks because he shattered his
oh yeah,
ankle.
that's right. Yes, I forgot about
But their pitching
that.
has been really good. I mean, Mitch Keller has been really good to start the year. Please don't snag him in our fantasy league. I've been keeping an eye on him like a hawk. Like a hawk, I've been watching
How about
Mitch Keller.
how about David Bednar, Derek, putting people to bed? I mean, it's just putting people to
I
sleep.
mean, the
Absolutely.
big the big bed puts him to sleep. That's what I like to say.
But to my point, Pittsburgh. I'll throw Cincinnati in there. We've talked about Arizona a little bit at this point. Um, they're just they're just better than Detroit and Oakland. Um, the and I don't know if it's because the talent's really that much better, or if it's just because the talent has a little more experience at this point. There could be a back and forth on that, but
I mean, the Tigers and A's
um,
just suck. Just
yeah, they
suck.
do. Well, it's because I mean, and maybe we can
Screw
talk about
Al
that
Avila.
just briefly because we haven't talked about Detroit at all. What's the problem? Why is this rebuild never ending? What's
So
going on?
so what happened is you had Al Avila be buddy buddy with Chris Ilitch, the owner of the Tigers, who's also the owner of the Bucks. Al Avila was buddy buddy with Chris's dad, R.I.P. Mike Ilitch. And so Chris kept him around way longer than he should have been. Al Avila was never qualified to be a general manager in the first place, to be very, very clear. Um, Dave Dombrowski basically gutted the entire farm system to acquire high end talent to compete for a World Series. And we did. We had a chance, made some ALCSs, came up short unfortunately, but they were there. And realistically, the Tigers could have bought themselves a few more years competing for the playoffs. I mean, the AL Central was very, very weak. I mean, outside of that one run the Kansas City Royals had in 2015, leading up to that, 2005 to 2012, outside of the Tigers, the American League was awful. The White Sox had nobody, the Royals had nobody, the Indians had nobody, now Guardians, and the Twins had nobody. They had nobody. Um, and so what happens when Al Avila comes in, trades Justin Verlander for nothing, literally nothing. JD Martinez for literally nothing. Lets Max Scherzer walk to the Nationals. Trades David Price to Toronto or Boston. I don't remember which one, but trade David Price. Um, and the guys they bring in, there's only two of them who are even on the 40-man roster still, I think. Jake Rogers came over in the Justin Verlander trade, but he's no premier catcher. Um, and then there's one more guy, and I can't think of who it is at the moment. But yeah, they just traded these guys away for nothing. I mean, they traded Nick Castellanos for Jamer Candelario. Like, are you serious? Are you serious? Like, and Jamer Candelario's no longer on the team. He's in Washington now. Um, yeah, just trading guys for absolutely nothing of worth. And frankly, drafting busts in the draft. I mean, we still have not seen very much of Casey Mize because he blew his arm. Spencer Turnbull blew his arm. Matt Manning blew his arm. I mean, Spencer Torkelson has not been very good. So they've just missed on all of these draft picks. They missed on the prospects they acquired in all these trades. And you go out and sign Javier Baez and the worst Detroit Tigers.
Benched today. Sorry to cut you off. Who like got benched today for a base running mishap? I
I
saw.
mean, I mean, since we're bringing him up, Javier Baez loser scoreboards. Scoreboards are the loser of the week. Quality base running is the loser of the week. Everywhere you look, it tells you how many outs there are. Every time there's an out, you got all the infielders and outfielders letting you know how many outs there are. And all of a sudden, you're an MLB player and you forget how many outs there are, and you get doubled up and look like a goofball. Um,
Derek, we knew how many outs there were in Little League. I mean,
correct,
literally, that's
correct,
you had to.
correct. So yeah, super embarrassing, super embarrassing. Um, maybe he's phoning it in because he's been so bad to start the season, so bad. The pitches he's swinging at, horrible, absolutely horrible. Um, but yeah, when you make mistakes like that, like signing Javier Baez instead of Carlos Correa, when you pay Eduardo Rodriguez like an ace, that's that's just bad business. I'll never remember when they brought in Jordan Zimmerman and paid him like an ace when they let Max Scherzer walk. That's the type of contract that'll screw you for 4 years. Um, love Miguel Cabrera. That loyalty contract they gave him, that is finally ending this year when he retires, handcuffed our salary cap for years. Handcuffed it for years to pay
I know the feeling.
Miguel Cabrera that much money. Um, and yeah, just completely whiffing on all of your minor league pitching and hitting prospects, every single one of them. So that's how the Tigers have been rebuilding for so long, trading away their star players for prospects that don't pan out, and the prospects that they do draft have had the worst rash of injuries that I've ever seen rip through a young starting rotation.
Bobby's calling up Detroit Mercy and
I mean,
going for the hospital.
I mean Henry
The ward.
Ford. Henry Ford
Oh no,
has been booked with
busy.
Tommy John surgeries. Um,
Oh my gosh.
but yeah, I mean, yeah, that's pretty much what it comes down to. Al Avila screwed us. Here's hoping Scott Harris can turn it around. Um, but he's got a long way to go. He's got a lot. It's amazing that the Tigers are in year one of an 8-year rebuild. I mean, it just doesn't happen.
Mhm.
It doesn't happen in professional sports, and somehow the Tigers have done it. We're at an hour 25. There's one more team we haven't talked about yet,
Okay. All right.
and that is Detroit Pistons. Because the Detroit Pistons had big news come out. Dwayne Casey moving into the front office. Moving into the front office. He is no longer a head coach. Dennis, thank you so much for pointing out. The St. Jude's pin will no longer be walking the sidelines. Bob, I'm sorry you had to wait this long for us to talk about Dwayne Casey. We wish you could have been here to talk about him
We had to
yourself.
listen to us talk about the Diamondbacks and A's and
Correct.
Rockies.
Correct. Um, but yes,
Fast forward, I'm sure, for Bobby.
Dwayne Casey has stepped down. Troy Weaver needs to throw the bag at Ime Udoka, pay him whatever he wants, Pay Ime Udoka whatever he wants. Somehow, some way, not get screwed out of the lottery. Draft Victor Wembanyama, and the Detroit Pistons could be in the playoffs next year, just like that. But
Wow.
thank you for absolutely nothing, Dwayne Casey. Literally, I mean, me and Bob make the joke all the time. Model consistency in facial expression, as in he never has any facial expressions. Just constantly
Yeah, thank you, Dwayne Casey, for the lack of emotion and
correct,
intensity
correct.
surrounding the game in any form.
And thank you for being, I'll give Dwayne Casey this much credit. Then we can move on to winners and losers in right bench ball. Dwayne Casey, like David Blau, Detroit sports legend, tank
Commander.
commander, perfectly executed.
Ah,
The amount of games that the Detroit Pistons lost in the fourth quarter, mind blowing. Mind blowing how many games in the fourth quarter where they were very competitive, leading, coming down to buzzer beaters, and they threw it away. Threw it away. Shameless tanking. So I will thank Dwayne Casey for being one of the most effective tank commanders, not only in Detroit sports history, not only in sports history, but in world history. Dwayne Casey, legendary tank commander.
it's no Commander, world history, heard it here first during Garbage Time Takes.
Correct. The St. Jude's pin, I mean, he always
Not,
had it.
not be president accounted for. Not
Correct.
anymore.
Correct. Dennis, winners and losers, right bench ballers, and then we can wrap it up since, like we mentioned, there won't be a garbage time take segment. But I will recap last week's as well. Your winner of the week, Dennis.
Let's do it. Let's do it. I think based on our conversation back at the beginning of the podcast, we might have some competing interests here, but I'm going winner. Pretty self-explanatory. John Rahm, winning the Masters, picking up that green jacket, second major for John on his way to what could quite possibly be a career Grand Slam. I mean, we will see. He has the U.S. Open under his belt. Now he has the Masters under his belt. So many great storylines that came out of that Masters win, winning on Seve's birthday, his idol, the Spaniard. There was the thing about his number at check-in was 49 when he won on April 9th. There's all sorts of fun stuff, but the other reason that John Rahm is a winner this week, and I don't know if you saw this, I caught it from I think a Golf Digest post. he was asked about why he didn't withdraw from this week's tournament, the RBC Heritage,
Yes, I did
after
see
winning the
this.
Masters. And he said, and I'm paraphrasing because I don't have it in front of me, I made a commitment to be here, and I plan to play not only for the spectators, but for the kids.
Yes,
Yeah,
I did
for the
see that.
kids.
John L. Smith would be
Um,
proud, Bobby Epler. John L. Smith would be proud for the
for the
kids.
kids, baby. I mean, gosh dang it, we're doing it for the kids out here, John Rahm, sweating and battling through 4 more days of golf this week in Hilton Head, South Carolina, for the kids. Absolute winner. I
Yeah,
mean, doesn't get better than that.
yeah, pure class. Pure class from John Rahm. It doesn't get much
It
better
is.
than that. The other thing about John Rahm on his victory speech, I'm sure you saw it. Zach Ertz texting him before the round, the group
Yes.
chat with JJ Watt, saying first green looks wide open, and then he four putts immediately four putts to start the tournament. Um,
Zach Ertz trying to sink John Rahm.
correct.
Unbelievable.
But yeah, as I mentioned earlier, my winner of the week was Live Golf, just because they had a really strong showing, and you know some of these guys, like I mean, I never would have expected Patrick Reed to be competitive in the Masters. Definitely was not expecting Phil Mickelson to come compete at the Masters, but sure enough, he came blacked out. We had the classic blackout Phil, and he he really tore it
Yep,
up
the
down the
little Live
stretch.
logo, right? He wore the
Correct.
little Live logo. I don't even know what his team name is. I don't care, but
Yeah.
yeah,
Uh,
unbelievable.
any honorable mentions before we get into losers? I have a couple.
I have one. Maybe this is debatable. Wish Bobby was here for this, but I did send it to him, and there seemed to be some excitement. I threw on MSU for bringing back Tyson Walker and Malik Hall
Yep,
for a fifth year.
I'll
That
agree.
seemed only appropriate.
Easy preseason top five team.
Yep.
Easy. The recruiting class they bring in, the guys they're returning. If I'm a Michigan State fan, and I will neither admit nor deny, or neither confirm nor deny whether I'm stirring the pot here, but if I was a Michigan State Spartan, I would expect nothing less than a Final Four appearance. If anything less than a Final Four appearance happens this
Oh
year,
man.
it would be an absolute failure of a season, and the MSU basketball program should be ashamed of themselves for wasting so much talent. I mean, at least that's what I was told when Michigan made the Sweet 16 3 years in a row. But yeah, MSU is easily the, I mean, in all seriousness, easily a top two team in the Big Ten, if not the top team in the Big Ten. My other honorable mention winner, Dennis, can you remind me of the name of the golfer who wore the PGA Tour shirt at the Masters?
Oh, was it Siwoo Kim?
Was it Siwoo Kim? My initial gut
I think it
instinct
was
was
Siwoo
Siwoo
Kim.
Kim. I'm pretty
Let
sure
me
it
look
was
it up.
Siwoo Kim as well. But for those of you
Oh
who didn't
man.
see
If
it,
you haven't seen this, yeah, it
classic.
is Siwoo Kim PGA Tour shirt. Yep, Siwoo Kim.
Yep. Just wore a white polo that had just all sorts of font sizes and types that just said PGA Tour all over the shirt. All over the shirt.
While paired with Phil. While paired with Phil in
Correct.
the first 2 days.
Correct. Um, but yeah, that was really my winner, my honorable mention winners, because I've got quite a few losers actually, Dennis. So who is your loser of the week?
I also have quite a few losers. I was debating back and forth a little bit here. I'm gonna say all the MLB injuries, particularly faces and heads. Kyle Farmer got hit in the face. We mentioned Orlando Arcia. That wasn't a injury to the face anyway. He fractured his wrist, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
But then there was also the MLB umpire Larry Vanover who got hit in the head and is hospitalized.
Really, I did not know
Um,
that.
After getting hit in the head with a relay throw. I saw that today while I was scrolling through some news. I was like, what is with all these people getting hit in the head? This is not good. So, yeah, all the MLB injuries. I may be leaving someone off there, but it just felt like a lot of more dramatic style injuries than normal.
Yeah. Um, I talked about Javi Baez, but the real loser, I checked my notes because I forgot about it. My real loser is religion. Dennis, did you see what the Dalai Lama did over this past
Oh man,
weekend?
I don't know. I don't know if I know this.
So the Dalai Lama I don't even care. I don't even care if I get the details wrong. This man deserves to be slandered. There's a little kid who wanted a hug from the Dalai Lama. And instead of getting a hug, he got a kiss. Straight up kiss this poor child. Got a little more than he bargained for. And then afterwards, he sticks out his tongue and tells this kid to suck his tongue. No joke. No joke. Goes like this and sort of like leans in towards the kid, asking him and telling him to suck on his tongue.
I mean, what a loser of the week.
Absolute lunatic, unhinged, creepy weirdo behavior. And then he released basically a Notes app apology and was like, the Dalai Lama likes to have fun when he's in public. And so he was just having fun. It was a little joke. He's sorry for, what he did. Man, if the Dalai Lama is willing to tell a kid to suck his tongue in public, what is he doing in private, Dennis? What is he doing in private?
I don't know if you or I or anyone else wants to answer that question there.
Exactly. So, unfortunately, religion, uh, in the negative spotlight again. This time it's the Dalai Lama. Keep this man away from kids, please. Please keep this man away from kids. Do you have any honorable mention losers, Dennis?
A couple. The just list them off here: Tigers, Nationals, Athletics, and Red Sox for losing to Tampa Bay and getting swept,
Fair.
and absolutely pummeled. And then the other one came to mind because I think we've talked about it before, but haven't brought it up on the pod. ESPN for removing positional versatility in fantasy baseball, massive loser. Screw that. That's been very,
Agreed.
very much a pain.
Not only did they remove
To
positional versatility, but they don't have the correct positional versatility for players who are needing
it's
it.
not even it's not even correct. Yeah.
Like Patrick Wisdom has played multiple games in right field, and they never gave him an outfield designation. Never gave him an outfield designation. And there's a couple other players who should have additional designations than they do, and for some reason they didn't give them to him. So yes, I agree, Dennis. Screw ESPN. I have a couple honorable mention losers. The Minnesota Timberwolves, Rudy Gobert punching his teammate in the huddle. That
Yes.
was pretty
Yes.
wacky. That was pretty wacky. And then tanking. The Dallas Mavericks under investigation for pretty much blatantly making a mockery of the play-in tournament by benching all of their starters uh, while they still had a chance to make the play-in game. So it was early last week, I think, um, or late last week. I think almost a couple days after the pod, maybe. Um, the Mavs were playing a game against, who were they playing? The Jazz, maybe? The Thunder, maybe? I don't remember who it was against. The Bulls, maybe? But they had a chance to still be in the play-in game if they won. If they lost, they were eliminated completely. And they sat Luka, they sat Kyrie, they sat Christian Wood, and they sat another couple role players and starters. Um, and essentially, Jason Kidd admitted to throwing the game, basically, in his post-game press conference. He was like, something, 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 circumstances changed, something, something, something. I don't know. It was very obvious that the Mavs weren't really that interested in winning the game. And the reasoning is because their first round pick goes to the New York Knicks if it's not inside the top 10. By the Mavericks losing, they were guaranteed to be top 10 and would have held on to their draft pick. There was a lot of misinformation saying the Mavs wanted a better draft pick. Not necessarily that they wanted a better draft pick, it's that they would have lost their draft pick had they made the play-in tournament. So not only would they have made the play-in tournament as a team likely to not really win anything in the playoffs, but they also wouldn't have had their first round draft pick in this year's draft. So they tanked, made it pretty obvious that they were not trying to win that game. And the NBA came down and was like, yeah, we're investigating this, and it'll be interesting to see what happens. Who knows? Maybe the NBA will come down real hard and say, you're giving your first round pick to the Knicks anyway. So it'll be interesting to see what the results of that. end up coming out to. Other than that, I'm good there. Right bench baller, Dennis.
Let's roll it. I'm going with I think this is correct pronunciation. Frankie Cordero, New York
Franchi.
Yankees. Franchi, okay, it is Franchi.
I'm pretty sure it is
Uh,
Franchi.
last week, 4 home runs, 9 RBIs, and only 27 plate appearances. He's tied with Judge for the team lead. Uh, I think he only has 5 hits, so basically every time he makes contact, he sends it out
Correct.
of the park. But pretty crazy stuff. Right bench baller there.
Yeah, my right bench baller, I'm actually going to dig into the Masters. Maybe he's not technically a right bench
Oh,
baller, but he is an amateur. Sam Bennett, Dennis. Sam Bennett,
hey, he back-to-back weeks. I got him in there last week, if you remember.
we
Love
do.
that guy.
I mean, tied for 16th, finished +2. Really impressive showing for, an amateur at the Masters. So he had to go right back and play like
Yeah, I was just
72
about to say
holes
that,
in a
Derek.
college tournament and carry his bag and whatnot and
His
go
own
back to the
bag.
college life. But yeah, impressive nonetheless for um, a U.S. amateur making his, debut at the Masters and playing really well.
Yeah, I was just about to say it was fun watching him in the cabin getting interviewed with Scotty Scheffler and John Rahm, and then just Sam Bennett sitting there, and they're asking him about going back and playing at I believe Texas A&M,
Yep.
um, and carrying his own bag and all sorts of fun stuff. So yeah, that was cool.
Yeah. Garbage time takes your money, and then we can wrap it up here. Last week we had the Orioles versus the Yankees. The over under was 8.5. Um, and we had a Bobby Epler special. Dean Kramer over under
Oh
three and
no.
a half strikeouts. Dennis,
I remember the message. I remember the message. I know that I lost the strikeout bet. I know that I had gone under, and I believe he got to 4.
correct. Dean Kramer.
Good friend Dean.
Dean Kramer had 4 strikeouts, and the Orioles won the game 7-6, meaning the over hit. The Orioles money line hit, and the over for strikeouts for Dean Kramer hit, which means yours truly went 3 for 3 last week. I put it out
Hey,
there.
there we go.
I called my shot on Dean Kramer. He delivered in the last inning. He struck out Aaron Judge twice. 2 of his 4 strikeouts were on Aaron Judge. So impressive stuff for Dean. Dennis, you had the Yankees, the over and the under. Um, Fortunately, a 1 for 3 there. And then Bob had the Yankees, the over and the over. So he gets a solid 2 for 3. Solid 2 for 3. Um, but yeah, I mean, like I said earlier, my garbage time takes your money was really just throwing some random picks out there for the NBA playoffs. So hopefully Bob will be back next week, and maybe we can get a double dip for having missed out on this week. Dennis, would you like to take away Bob's usual role of
Oh
plugging?
my gosh, I don't know if I know them all, Derek. That's
No,
embarrassing.
honestly,
I know it's garbage time takes your money on Twitter, and I believe the Instagram is garb time takes your money. But don't quote me on that. Maybe just watch the last minute of last week's episode.
maybe I should just splice it in. Um,
Just splice in Bobby's rundown.
yeah,
I know garbage time takes is most of them, and there's one that's garb time takes.
correct, and I don't remember which one it is. I know for sure Garbage Time Takes is Instagram. I'm pretty sure Garb Time
Okay,
Takes is Twitter. But I'm not for
that sounds
certain
right actually.
because it's Garbage
Because I
Time Takes
definitely check the
YouTube.
Instagram more, and it's garbage.
It's Garbage Time Takes
Okay, that's what it
YouTube,
is.
Garbage Time Takes Instagram, and Garb Time Takes on Twitter. I'm pretty sure.
Between the two of us, we put it together.
I'm
Me
pretty
and
sure.
Derek are as good as Bobby put together. I'm
Yeah,
pretty sure that's right.
yeah.
So for the rundown then, and we're gonna go lock it in here, and Bobby might be having an aneurysm right now. Garbage time takes your money on YouTube. Garbage time takes your money on
Not
Instagram,
not
and
Garbage
Garb
Time
time
Takes your
takes on Twitter.
money. It just Garbage Time
Oh,
Takes.
you're right. You're right. I get thrown off. Garbage Time Takes on YouTube and Instagram, Garb Time Takes on Twitter. I think that finally is.
I'm pretty sure that's what it is as well. But yeah, thanks again so much for watching. Feel free to like, comment, subscribe on the YouTube. Feel free to like, follow, comment on our Instagram. Feel free to tweet at us. We're always looking for engagement, always looking for things to talk about. Feel free to subscribe on YouTube. Turn that bell on so you can be notified whenever we post a new podcast or any other random videos that we sometimes post. With that being said, thanks again so much for watching. We appreciate it. And with that, in 3,
Two.
peace.
Peace.